Okay, and we're almost there. Setting everything up. Okay, so this is Illustrator, but that's not what we're doing today. So let's start with the new blank document. So when we hit new document and you guys open Illustrator, you're going to have something similar to this. You may have a kind of an interface. Yeah, flag for Yorba Linda. Yeah, there was a competition for design a flag for Yorba Linda, and I entered. So you had to live in Yorba Linda, and who knows? I'll find out in a couple months if it won. Kind of cool. But whatever, it was just a quick project, get my mind to be creative. So you're going to have like coming up for different projects. Again, much like we have in Photoshop, you can have options. So they're going to give you some kind of presets. We're basically dealing with print at this point, and we're going to be dealing with inches. Many times they're coming up points or pixels and stuff. So 8.5 by 11 inches. Color mode is always typically CMYK with Illustrator. Though Photoshop we usually RGB. Illustrator kind of defaults to CMYK, which is fine. If we need it as RGB, we'll save it later as such. So don't worry about that. And then we're just going to pull this up and just kind of click OK. We're going to get a document that's basically 8.5 by 11. Thanks, Unique. Yeah, that's okay. And then I'm just going to kind of go through some of the panels. Let me make sure I got stuff hidden here. Hold on. I'm going to resize so you guys can see everything. All right, so very much like Photoshop, you're going to find we have items on the left, items on the right, and then we're going to have most of those items up here available in the drop downs. So what's the big difference? Let's start off with why. Why do we use Illustrator? How is it different than Photoshop that we've already learned to use? Well, one, Illustrator is a vector-based program, which means it's basically all mathematics. So if I draw an item, and I'm going to just draw a circle, and I'm going to give it a fill color here, and I'm going to give it a little stroke, move that up a little bit. And I zoom into this, and again, same keyboard shortcuts, Command plus or Command minus, the same you've been using for Photoshop. As I keep zooming in, you're going to see when I look at the edge here, let me get the edge, where it's completely smooth. There is no pixelization because it's mathematically based. Okay, so everything in Illustrator is mathematical. Now you can bring in a photograph, and if that's the case, it's going to be pixels, or we can actually convert that picture to a vector base, and we'll get into how to do that. But again, the beauty of Illustrator is because it's vector based, we can make it as big or as small as we like, and it will retain all the information. Okay, so it doesn't get pixelated as we get bigger. If I took this circle and I decided I wanted to print this thing out at 60 feet to go on some billboard with the right printers, obviously it's going to print in sheets. But if I print it out, it's going to be perfectly smooth because it is vector based. Had it been pixel based, you're going to get choppiness, you're going to get kind of issues going on. You're going to actually see the pixels. But with vector based, there is none. So it's all mathematically done. So that's one advantage of Illustrator, is it's vector based. So it's, as I say, resolution independent, meaning we really don't care how big or small it is. It can be moved up or moved down without destroying things. Secondly, Illustrator is we use it a lot for things like obviously drawings or illustrations. But we also will use it a lot for logos and those kind of items because we want them to be really small or we're going to want them really big. And with Illustrator, you're going to find a lot of times we're dealing with kind of solid colors. Okay, very fundamental basic cartooning. Does that mean we can't do gradients? No, we can do gradients in here. And we can paint and we can do all those kind of items that you would think you could normally do. But again, it's vector based instead of pixel based. Okay, so we don't necessarily get that smooth blend where we were painting with a paintbrush, say in Photoshop, where we can get that kind of a smear or blur. And here we have to do it through gradients and such. Okay, so there's a little bit difference in how you're going to work, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to use both as an artist, as a designer. I literally use both. I use them both all the time. In fact, I probably use Illustrator a little bit more than Photoshop, even though I like Photoshop better. That's my personal preference here. But there's a lot that we can do with this. So today we're just going to kind of go through some of the very basics, get you kind of started on that and kind of a little bit of the interface, some of the things to be looking for. And then I'm going to give you guys time to kind of work with Illustrator and just kind of play around, as they say. But then you'll have time that you can work on the record albums because they're going to be obviously due on Tuesday. So let's just kind of start with some of the basics of what this is and some of the tool interface here. The black arrow is called the selection tool, and the white arrow is the direct selection tool. So with the selection tool, basically I'm selecting an object or something that I've drawn, where with the direct selection tool, I'm able to pick out points within that object. Okay, so one picks all of it, and the other one picks specific points within that box shape, whatever it is that I've actually created. So I started here with a circle. So I'm using the ellipse tool, and if I hold the shift key down as I draw, it will give me a perfect circle. I can also just kind of tap with my mouse, and it gives me a dialog box. In this case, it says the last time you drew an ellipse, it was 3.2 by 3.2. Do you want to make another one? If I click OK, boom, up another one pops. Okay, and then I can do my selection tool and just kind of drag them around. Okay, so the white area is what we call our canvas, which is the area that will be printed. Outside of that, outside of this, what they call the artboard, is not printed. So if I hit print right now, it will print everything on the white page. If I pull this off to the side and say print, this one circle over here on the right will not print out. Only what's on the white or the artboard will print. Okay, so and the artboard is changeable. So in Photoshop, we call it the canvas, the size of the file. In Illustrator, it's just the artboard. So I just hit an 8.5 by 11 one to start with, but I can change that if I want. Above the hand, again, your panel should be very similar to mine. I haven't modified these too much. It's called the artboard tool. And when I click on that, you see I get this kind of marching ants and I get little handles. And if I just drag that, I'm actually making my artboard bigger. Okay, so you can change this as you go. You'll find that I do this a lot where I'm kind of working and I just keep moving and just keep making my artboard bigger. Why? Because I want to see it typically on white. Sometimes I want to see it on a dark color. So I'll create a black background. But you're just kind of creating as you go with this. And again, you can make your artboard as big as you want. And also know because things are independent resolution, I don't need to be working big. Does that make sense? So right now, things are very big, but I could work very small on this artboard and it really won't matter. Because if I'm working small down here, I'm just obviously zoomed in more. I can make this thing bigger as I want, bigger later if I want. Okay, so I am not restrict it. Where in Photoshop, I wouldn't want to work small and make things bigger. Where in Illustrator, I can work completely small and enlarge things as I go. Okay, so you know, feel free to work where you're comfortable, and know that we can change, as we said, the artboard to whatever size we want. Okay, we can make this bigger or smaller. So if you know you're going to be at, you know, 8.5 by 11, obviously just start with 8.5 by 11, and that's the best way. And up here you can see here is my width and height of my artboard because I've selected it. So if I want it back to 8.5 by 11, boom, now we're back to 8.5 by 11 up here with my artboard. Okay, so the artboard is changeable, so don't get like stuck. Oh, I didn't make it the right size. But you can change it as you want. But you know, if I'm working on, you know, let's say we're going to be doing some posters later, or let's say we're doing your book cover in Illustrator, you know, you're going to make it 6 by 9 or 8 by 10 or whatever size you would be. Just kind of make that, and then you have your artboard to work. And know that things that are off the artboard don't print. So if you're working things, you're like, I don't know if I want, you know, pink, or you know, maybe I'm playing with it and I want to do like put that kind of a green circle. I can go back and forth. I can drag things on and off to kind of figure out what I want, and just know that anything off to the side off the artboard will not be printing out at the end. Okay, it's all there when you save. So when I hit Command S, Command Save, it's all going to be here. I'm going to put this on my desktop, and I'm just going to call it Test. Class. And save. So the options are Adobe Illustrator. Okay, and then we have PDFs we'll use a lot. We used to use EPSs, but we don't. That's an encapsulated PostScript. Template, you may or may not use that too much. And then we have SVG. That's if we need something potentially with some transparencies. But typically, we're going to save these as AI. So AI will keep things native. It will allow us to move things, change things, and we'll have some layers too. And I'll show you the layers here as we go. Okay. If I'm going to, I'm just going to hit Save as Creative, keep compatibility. Boom. Yes. If I need to put this out as like a JPEG, I want to put it onto a website, I can export, right? And you can export as, and you can select down here, you see PNG, JPEG, TIFF. So other formats that you might potentially need to use down the line, that would be an export. Okay, so we're not doing that right now. Okay, any questions so far? Again, if something comes up, you know, I'm moving, you know, the train is running. If I'm moving too fast, just tell me, type something in, and we will slow it down or go back over it. So we drew an item, a circle, and we use the direct select tool to move things around, or a select tool, but I'm going to use the direct select tool on that thing now. So when I did that, you notice it kind of changed how it looks, but I also have these little blue points, and if I scroll over them, you see it says anchor. Okay, and if I click on it, you'll see we get these little handles. Okay, and these are called the Bezier curve. This is a Bezier handle, which allows me to modify the angle or the shape, in this case, of the circle. So if I move this handle out, you can see I'm stretching. If I move it in, I'm stretching, and you can see I can turn and I can twist with this. I can move my curves around. So everything in Illustrator is quite adaptable. So right now we have 4 points making up this, which was a shape, a circle, now into this blob. And I can move these points in and out to create whatever potential shape I have in mind. And I can move the handles, or the Bezier curve handles, to get me the angle that I want. And if I want more, I can stretch these out, or I can bring them in. That's going to make a tighter angle. Okay, so everything is kind of adjustable here. I can even add in points. So if I go down to the pen tool, which is 2 down from the select tool, you see there's add an anchor or delete an anchor, okay? Or anchor point, this makes it, converts it over. So I'm gonna say I wanna add an anchor. I can just click and then add it other anchors, okay? I can come back to my direct select tool and I can move those around. I can also delete an anchor. And when I do, it just kind of connects from one point to the other. And then I can take, again, my handles and I can bring them in to kind of, in this case, give me more of a straight anchor. Okay, so that point is coming into kind of a straight area. Sometimes it doesn't quite select it. So, be patient. If you didn't get it, come back, select it again. It gets a little weird sometimes when you're trying to select these points. So it'll take a little bit of practice to get used to being able to select the point that you want and move it around to kind of get what you want. So in here, if I select, you can then move it around. And you'll also notice something else that kind of happened here, because now we've got these corners basically. I get a little circle in the corner. Let me see if I can zoom in so it shows it a little bit bigger. And when I get that, I can select that point and I can drag. So I can kind of round my corners with that. And by doing this, right now I'm rounding all the corners on this shape. So it rounded the corner over here also. If I select it, click on it first and then move, I'm only moving that corner as opposed to the other. If I select, I'm moving both. If I just click and drag, I'm moving both. If I click and then drag, I'm moving one. Does that make sense? So I can change the corners or the roundness of an edge. So let me show you that on a square or a rectangle. I'm going to draw a square. Again, I'm holding the shift key to draw it perfectly square. If I let go of the shift, I can just draw kind of a free form rectangle.
Oh, that's more easier than the pen tool on Photoshop.
Yes. Yeah. So Illustrator, you're going to find, is really about shapes. There is a pen tool, and we're going to go over that. But really, this is about making shapes and modifying shapes. So you have to think a little bit differently. In Illustrator, a lot of times you're starting from nothing. Where in Photoshop, you're typically starting from a photo, right? So you have one photo and you want to keep, I don't know, you want to keep the astronaut in the picture, and then you want to take a picture of the sequoias. So you're going to clip out the astronaut and make it look like he's standing in the sequoia trees. Okay, where here, you would draw the astronaut, you would typically draw the trees and pull them all together. Does that make sense? So here it's kind of like it's really more of a building a lot of times. But we can work from other things, and we will get into that. So, but the basic way of Illustrator is kind of like shapes. So I've got this rectangle, and as you can see, I've got the corners. I got the little rounds in the corner. And this is a newer version of Illustrator we have. I don't know, say 4 or 5 versions ago, they didn't have this. You would have to click a bunch of things to get to this. Now you can just kind of click it. And if I click and drag, you see it moves all of my corners. Okay, so it's really kind of nice. If I click on just one, it just moves that one corner. So you can see quickly how I can make a lot of really cool shapes just by kind of drawing and clicking in literally a matter of seconds. Now, it's funny because there's a rounded triangle tool, which kind of builds it in. I don't know, I never draw it this way anymore. It's kind of an old tool because I always just kind of draw a square and then kind of round the corners the way I want. Okay, and again, I can make this a square corner as quickly as I can make it a rounded corner. So, either one of these tools, they're basically we'll call them identical. They do the same thing. The ellipse tool is how we make circles or ovals. Polygon will allow us to make shapes. And if I click, I can tell how many sides I want. I want a 6-sided polygon, boom. If I click again and I want a 4-sided polygon, boom, I got a square. If I click again, let's say I want, oops, where am I at? Sorry, polygon, click. If I make this a 3-sided, click OK. Now I got a triangle. Okay, it's tiny there. Let me zoom in. Blow that up for you guys. Oops. Come on, hide away. Okay, so now I've got a triangle. So this polygon shape, even though it looks like it's 5, 6-sided, you can make a triangle out of it real quick. Okay, you can make a 4-sided. You could do a square. You could do 6-sided, 8-sided, 20-sided. Right. At some point, if you did like 100-sided, it's going to look like a circle because it's going to have a lot of little points. Okay, a star tool. So if you want a star, you can kind of click how many points you want on the star. It's 5. Let's say you want another one that's got 6 points. Now you got a 6-point star. Click again. $10-point star. Okay, we've got a 10-pointed star. My lines are getting really big. Let me just change that. Okay, so everything is kind of adjustable. And again, these shapes are not permanent. So even though I have this 6-sided polygon, if I click it with my direct select tool, you'll see I get that little curved item, so I can change the angle of the edges here. All right, so this lets you really create some really beautiful shapes, I must say, like this. Right, I can just kind of round these off to make some really awesome kind of things. And again, if I want just one, click on it. So let me go direct select tool, click. It turns blue. Now only this corner or this edge is going to be affected, and you can do that. All right, so you can kind of create some really kind of fun things right away. So let me do this one. Oops. What's it not letting me select it? Boom. That's weird. It shouldn't be doing it. It should be doing the other corner. Let me try this one. I don't know what's going on. Oh, I got some weird point. That's it. Okay. My points crossed over so much they got weird. There we go. Okay. So you can see where we can make these really cool shapes. And then to move or turn, can kind of just go to the corners here, and you see it turns into kind of a turn thing. And now we turn it. Okay, and we've got this really kind of beautiful shape. That's kind of, it's very symmetrical. It's evenly curved. I can check it with my points. Look at my Bezier curves. I can see those are coming out at the same point. Likewise down here, I can see they're coming out at the same point. If it was a little thinner, yeah, Pepsi Bismol, yeah, right. Could be funny commercials. So again, we can Illustrator is so much fun because you can make all these cool things, and you can. We're gonna in a minute start to show you how you can put them together to make different crazier kind of items, but it lets you modify these shapes incredibly well. Okay, so in Illustrator, what do I do a lot? I do a lot of this. I do a lot of creating shapes. Um, and then I'm putting things in the shapes, and it might be something like a sticker. Let me just pull out something here. You know, so like this was it's a compound shape. I put a circle and kind of a rounded rectangle at the top and a rounded rectangle at the bottom here to make this kind of sticker. 1 second. Again, this is Illustrator. So I started with a rectangle with a little bulge on the side here, rounded them off, and then everything inside is drawn up in Illustrator. Okay. And the cool thing is with like this design per se, it's a sticker, but all I got to do is enlarge it and it's on a t-shirt. Okay. Or it's on a postage card or a postcard or something like that. So Illustrator is a very, very, very versatile tool that I think you're going to really come to like and learn to love it as we go. Okay. Likewise with the colors, it defaults to black and white if we want to. Okay. Command Z will take it back to where it was, undo. But I can also click on these. So we have the stroke and then we have the fill. If I want no fill, I just hit the none, and now it's just a stroke with no color inside. If I want a color, I could double click on this here and pull it up. Or I can click on my colors palette over here. I have open my little thing, and I can click on there. We give it a blue, and boom, now we're in the blue with that. Okay, and as long as it's selected, I can come over here and start to click with my color. Okay, so if you don't have color, just kind of hit the window and you can get that. Down here we have a guide so we can select different colors, much like we've done before. And they have systems built in where we can do Pantone, or we can pick specific colors, and we'll do that a little bit later. And I can also do gradients. Okay, so there are basic gradients that are built in. If I click them, it does that, and we can adjust the point and where the gradient goes with that, and we can fade. Okay, so a lot of these are kind of built in already. And then of course we can make our own. Okay, and all you really have to do is kind of click and go. So it's a very, I'd say, playful application that lets you kind of create and define and make things as you go. And it's like I said, it's a very, very powerful program. Okay, so we have fill color, we have a stroke. The stroke is the outer edge. Up top here, you see an alternate way of getting there. So we've got some preset palettes. We also have the stroke. And again, it's the same colors, but we can bring those in. And then we have the stroke here, meaning how big is it? How outside of it? So I'm going to click on this object here. And it says we have a stroke of 4 point. I could take it to 1. You see it gets thinner. If I take it to 9, it got thicker. Okay, so we can make those bigger or smaller based upon what we do. And the cool thing about Photoshop, I'm sorry, Illustrator, is as I zoom in and out, it will adjust things. So I have this same shape, and I'm going to hold the Option key down, and that just duplicates it. Just makes a direct copy, and I can drag. And if I hold the Shift as I scale, it actually scales down even the stroke. So you see here, the stroke now is 4.6 point, where here it was 9. Okay, so as I move up and down, it will proportionally adjust the stroke size. Okay, now over here is the properties panel. Oh, this little zoom panel gets in my way all the time. So we're in the properties panel here, and this is showing you basically the size of the XY is the position on the page. Don't worry about that too much. But this will tell you the width. So right now, this shape that I'm looking at is 0.53 inches by 0.457 inches. So that's the width and the height. So if you want to make something very specific, you could. So let's say I want to make this into a 3-inch sticker. So I want to make the width 3. I'm just going to kind of over click, type 3 and click, and it makes it 3 inches, and it automatically adjusts the height to go proportionally with it because it's been linked to maintain proportions. And then we have that item, which is 3 inches wide. Now, if I move the stroke down, you see it still stays the same. Okay, so it's mathematically making adjustments so this thing still stays 3 inches wide, even though my stroke got thinner. So what it's actually doing is making, in this case, the fill color larger as we go. Okay, so, and it's a very forgiving application. So if you're like, I don't want that, can I change it back to 15 or move it to something else? And again, these are presets, but if you want, 10.666 as a stroke width, you can, and now it has that as a width. Okay, so even though there are presets here, you're allowed to make them any kind of number in between. Again, that comes in handy if you're trying to duplicate something and you want it to be the same. You can look at the numbers to figure that out. Now, also in the properties panel, again, we see the stroke and fill, or fill and stroke, much like we see up here. If we click on the stroke, we get some other options about the angles and the corners, and we'll go through that in a little bit. Opacity, is it 100%, which means it's completely solid, or do I want to make it less? And you can see I can also at some point make a mask if I want to. So I'm going to put this over top. Right now it is blocking out the rectangle. If I make my opacity, say, 60%, you can see now it's bleeding through with that. So again, you can start to blend things by working it that way. And then also here are some effects. And again, these are similar to what we might find in Photoshop. In fact, some of them are Photoshop effects. And what these do, they kind of do a pixelization effect. Okay, so they're doing these up here, Illustrator Effects, are all vector-based effects. Okay, so in Photoshop, we were doing things like smart filters. There is no smart filter here. We just have effects, and we can go through and pick those out as to what we want. And they really do some cool things, really fun things built in. We'll just say an arc, and you can see it built an arc out of that shape, and I can make that adjustable as to what I want. Okay, so again, it's really, really sweet. And you can distort things. To whatever way you want. Okay, so it is a really fun program to work with to kind of let your mind go. And then they have other versions, right? Here we'll do a lower arc. Wow, that's a beautiful shape there. I'm going to keep that because I want that later. That's going to be something later. Trust me. Make that into a sticker. Cool shape. It's a little thick on the edges right now, but that's on to something. And we'll do the warp again. So here's like a flaggy wave, right? Like this is kind of cool, right? You can adjust a banner kind of thing. Fish, I don't know if I've ever used a fish. I guess you could if something, I don't know. Fish eye. Again, it's just kind of putting things in kind of a perspective. Squeeze. See how that would be something nice. All right, so you could do a ton of things with these, and we're not built in. And again, even though we've built this squeeze shape, you'll see I still can round off the corners, right? So right now they're very pointy. I can go to my stroke here, and I can round them. So the cap is how it ends. So I do that, it's going to round off the edges. So you can see it's kind of, it didn't change anything. What it did was when I hit the corner, it rounded that edge. So I don't get that point. So right now I have that point. Zooming in, let me get over there so you can see it. It just curved it off real nice. Okay, this is going to give it a chisel cut, or they call it a bevel. This is how the points align. How do I zoom in? Command plus the command line, the same way you would do in Photoshop, same keyboard shortcuts. This is just kind of putting where that point is. In this case, it's aligned the center to the outside or the inside. By default, it goes like here. If you need it for something else, you can. But here we go. We just that little corner to do. Yeah, control plus or minus, I think if you're on the PC. Someday I'll get those PC strokes down. But even though we've rounded the corners, which is awesome, maybe I want this one corner, or I want the corners to come in. I'm going to select here, and then I can just round them in. Okay, so I've rounded those shapes on top of distorting the shapes. I can do all these kind of really kind of fun things with these shapes. So again, everything is kind of adjustable with this. Some of the similar things you've learned, we had alignment things with Photoshop. Here they're used probably more than ever. I'm using my select tool, and I'm just going to kind of draw a few shapes here. Option drag, I get the same shape again. Option drag. This one you use a lot. So I've got these kinds of shapes, and I want them to all kind of line up. So I can select them all, and I'm just going to drag over all of them. You can see they're all been selected now. Go to align. Oh, that little thing here is in the way. Let me do it over here. And I can select my alignment. So if I want them to all line up, go to now. Okay, so now they're all aligned on the base. If I want them aligned to the top, I do that. I can even distribute them proportionally, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of adjustable and variable things here in order to get things literally mathematically right, get things to line up perfectly. And this is probably one of the reasons we use it for logos a lot. And we're going to start to work on logos soon, not today. But the idea that we can create shapes and we can bring things together and we can modify and merge and work them all up. Okay. With that. So it's kind of a really cool adjustable tool. Okay. Questions so far what we've done? We just kind of played with shapes. We've used the select tool and the direct select tool. Remember, direct select tool lets you pick individual points, whereas the select tool picks the whole object. Okay, the whole project. Now, there are layers, and let me just kind of show you here. I'm going to click on layers, but if you look, it says there's only one layer, layer one, but I've got multiple drawings. Well, in Illustrator, unlike Photoshop, every time you do a new thing, it makes a new layer. In Illustrator, every time you do a new thing, it builds it into the same layer. So you can see all these things that say paths or rectangles or ellipses are all objects within the layer. And I can turn them on and off. Okay, I can turn things on and off as we go. We'll get a big one shape here. Okay, so I can turn them on and off through this, and I can move things around in these layers. And I like to call them sub-layers because they're layers within the layers. And then I can also build brand new layers on top of this. So right now, all of this has been built into one layer. If I want a new layer, I'm just going to click the plus, create a new layer, and now I've got a new layer. I could turn off that layer. It's still there. I just turned it off. And then I could do a brand new shape or object on this new layer. Okay, so this is here. And if I want the other ones back, I can turn those on and off. it's a whole new layer. And Illustrator does this kind of defining. If you look at this, see this little thing that says it's red here and this one's blue. Because I'm on this layer, the outer part of this object is red. If I click down here, you'll see it turns blue because now it's on the blue layer. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a visual as to what layer you're on, in this case by the color of the handles that's created. Why would you use layers? I use layers when I'm doing something like maybe a package design where I'm doing the die line or the shape of the box. I'll draw that all out. And then I can build on top of that the items that I want to be printed. Okay, so many times you'll find a template or the outer shape in one layer, and then you do another layer for your artwork. Okay, so that's done quite often with Illustrator. So each layer is for that. And again, you can name these, right? I can double click on it. Right click, right. Okay, that's going to do that. Let me see if I get the rename. Where is it? It's right click only. There we go. Triple clicked on it, and I can put, you know, the star layer. Okay, so you can rename these as you get sometimes more complicated pieces. You're going to have multiple layers on top as you go. Just again, it's just a way of working, the way of processing it to help you along. Okay, so there are layers, like I said, but it kind of creates a sublayer. And this is for every time you draw something, right? So if I draw another shape, select the right layer. It will put it as a new layer here. Okay, so every time I draw, it's adding a layer. Or sublayer, I should say. It's probably a better way of doing it. And you can tell what sublayer you're on by the little, in this case, the blue dot. In this case, if I'm on the red dot, let me select it, it puts that here, right? So that little color indicates the artwork is selected. So if I want to click on this piece here, I know it's in the layer, but I don't know where it is. Okay, here it is, right? Because they're all pretty much the same. They look the same over here. Now I've got that sublayer, and I could move that up, okay, or move it down if I wanted to. And it knows that I've selected it by here. And I can select multiple items also here by doing the select tool. And now you can see all of those shapes are selected, and I can move those around. Okay, so they're not grouped at this point. They're just kind of selected together. Okay, we can, much like we did in Photoshop, group things. So we do object, and then just Command G will group. Okay, so that if I hit group, whenever I select one at this point, I select them all, and I can move those around, and I can scale those proportionally. They're going to scale proportionally, bigger or smaller. All right, then I can select them and I can isolate them. We'll get into that a little bit later. It's a bit too much today, but we can select them all, right? And I can change colors also because they're all selected as a group. Okay, does that make sense, guys? Questions so far? Selecting them, turn that off. All right, so we've got shapes. We've been able to move things. We can change the stroke. Okay, I like that one. In a sec. I'm going to put that on a whole new page because I'm just digging that shape. It was a happy accident, happy shape. And that's going to be something later. Step save. Okay. Now the other awesome thing about Illustrator is we can start to combine shapes. Okay, so let's say I want to put the circle on the front of this rectangle. I'm gonna get rid of all this other stuff just to clear up some clutter. Just selecting and deleting. Let's get them out of there for now. And I want this to be a part of that. So I want to make this all into one shape. So what I do is I select both. And what I want to do before I do it, I want to make sure they're kind of aligned properly. So I'm getting my align tool and I want to center, vertically align. You can see the little preview. And I click that and that makes it pretty good. I'm just double check, see that's down, that's center. So now I know that circle is aligned high and low, top and bottom to the rectangle in this case. And then I'm going to use what's called the Pathfinder. So this is a term we're going to use a lot. We're going to Pathfind. You're going to see that a lot. So this is a Pathfinder tool. If it's not in your panels here, go under Window, and you'll get that over here. It's the same place. Either way is perfectly fine. And what this does is it lets us combine things. Okay. Now, I will tell you that it's going to give you a little preview as you roll over. Unite option creates a compound. This one's going to be minus front. This is going to intersect. This is going to exclude. Oftentimes, I know it's going to do it, but I don't know which one to push. So sometimes we'll just play, meaning I'm going to select those two and hit shape mode. And you can see combine them both into one. Well, maybe that's not what I wanted. Maybe I wanted something else. And you can see now I cut out that little part. So I know that by playing with the shape modes and the Pathfinder tools, I can create these very unique kind of shapes here. So in this case, it took out that little crossover, that part that was overlapping. So Command Z just undoes it. So playing with the Pathfinder will be a way that we kind of create additional shapes. This one's just doing an outline. This is cropping it to that overlap. This one is kind of trimming it. This is going to merge those two. This one divide it, so it actually cut this up. So let me show you that. So it literally took these pieces and made them into jigsaw puzzle, for that matter. All the area that was overlapping, it did that. So the Pathfinder tool will be something that we'll start to use a lot because we're able to kind of create one unique shapes, but also kind of make things where I can cut things out pretty easily, right? So if I have a circle, and again, I just want to kind of make it cut out in the middle, I could do that by, again, selecting those shapes, selecting both of them, and then I can click the minus, and it's now cutting out that little square of that circle, right? I mean, you could draw it physically, but it's going to take you forever. But here I did two shapes, bam, click, Pathfinder made it all here. And what it does also is then it creates the points, the corners. So if I zoom in, you can see it made these additional points or anchors on the project. Okay, and again, we have things like we can still round the corner. You know, and again, to create some really kind of cool, funky shapes, which will become helpful as you're drawing. You're going, what is that? Well, that's a helmet for a Martian astronaut now, right? So a couple quick clicks, a couple different shapes, bringing them together. So, you know, trying to imagine how things come together and how things merge is really kind of cool in Illustrator, and something we do a lot, is creating new shapes out of something that didn't really exist before. Questions thus far? We're going to get more into it as we go. All right. Again, it does a lot. It's a really cool kind of platform. So now I'm going to do kind of a I'm just going to draw in their face. And we give it a astronaut. Martians are kind of weird, right? So I'm going to make this the face in the helmet. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shape it. I'm going to select these corners down here. I want those to be, let me actually do this. I'm going to hold the shift key and select both of these corners. Now they're both blue. So when I make a change, it's going to affect only these two bottom corners, not the top. I'm going to drag those in, give them a little chin. And then I want this to be behind the helmet. So under object, there's a thing called a range. Okay, so bring things forward, backwards, send to back, send backwards, send to back. So and again, you can see the keyboard shortcuts. In my case, it's the Mac, so it's Command bracket and Command right bracket, left bracket. Okay, so some of these keyboard shortcuts you just kind of learn to do because you're doing them so much. So I'm just clicking that backwards. I'm just kind of going through. We've got that now behind the helmet, and I want that to line up. And I can zoom right into it, right? So I can really make sure I'm lining up just the way I want. So if I zoom too far, you can see that, and you can see it get really right into those points. Okay. So now that's the helmet. I don't like his color too much. I'm going to change that again. Martians should be probably red, right? They are Martians. Oh, make them red. Okay, so it's red with the pink stroke coming around the helmet. I think I'm going to enlarge that a little bit just to kind of exaggerate that. So that's it, 8 point. And again, I don't like this corner here. I'm not liking this kind of point. So I'm going to go back over here to my properties and hit my stroke, and I'm going to give it the rounded corner point, and that just kind of softens that edge just a little bit that kind of makes it feel a little bit better. Okay, so we're making a dude with a helmet. Needs to have a couple eyes. I'm just drawing it in. Too big of strokes. I'm going to pull that back to 4 point, and I want it to be white. So I can click my white down here. That's one eye. Make it a little bigger. I'm going to hold the Option and drag, and I'm just dragging it over. You can see it's staying in line with that little guide there. Oops, dropped it. It didn't hold. Okay, so we've got those two there. I'm going to group those, so if I decide to move them up or down or whatever, they're going to stay together. So it's Command G, or up here under group would be here because they're already grouped, but you can group them here. And then he needs to have a little smile. So smiles are what? They're a circle. Got a big mouth. Going to align that there. And see, I get my guide back in there. I can see that little guide that's telling me we're here. I'm going to hold my direct select, and I want to get rid of, I'm going to actually pull that down. So I'm just going to drag that straight down. And now I can also click on that point and use my arrows. And I'm just kind of drawing it straight down. Okay, turn cancel. Okay, so now we've got a face. And I'm just selecting it, moving it up a little bit. And then it's probably got like a, I don't know, triangle nose. So Polygon tool, click, three-sided, yes. Oh, I got small. Get that nose in place. And you can see as you're drawing, as you're moving, guides are starting to pop up. It's always trying to give you relationships to other items. Okay, so right now, this is telling me I'm at the same height below the eye as I am above the mouth. And I am centered in the center of the face here, this other shape that I'm in. I can drop. So literally in a couple seconds, we actually drew a shape with it. And again, these have white. This is a no color, or this is white, not a blank area. So if I put a shape behind it, object, arrange, send to back, you can see that I have that white shape here, and I have this behind. If I wanted to clip this out, I could take this along with the shape of the face, and I can use a pathfinding tool to clip out just the mouth so we can start to see the background that's starting to appear. Okay, so you can see with just a couple minutes of playing around, you can create these really kind of fun and creative things that will be used later for, I don't know, logos, icons, whatever you happen to be doing. Select it all. I've grouped it. Oops, missed a couple eyes there. Why didn't it click the eyes? Should have. Let me do that. I'm going to group it, and that should work. There we go. Now we can move it all the way around. And it's scalable, right? So I can make it really small, I can make it really big. Okay. Whatever I decide to do, I can, and it will hold the resolution because it's Illustrator, right? It's a vector-based item. Selecting, holding the shift as I move, and I can make things bigger or smaller. Okay, so our first step, we're almost there. I want to show you one more tool, which is the pen tool. And then we're gonna give you guys some time to work with this, play with Illustrator a little bit, and obviously finish up your record albums and such. Any questions so far? Does it make sense, everybody? Pause.
Yes.
Good. All right. Anybody, any issues? Shout them out. It's okay.
Okay, on my side, I think.
Few people have done this before. Okay.
Yeah. I actually made a character using Illustrator that's very, very different from using Photoshop.
It is. It's totally different.
Totally different.
You basically have to think a little bit differently just to how it works. But I think you'll find that they're both very useful, and we're actually using them both, and we're going back and forth a lot of times. And we will do that. We're going to show you. I'm going to show you how they work back and forth as we go. So the last big tool I wanted to show you today was the pen tool. Okay, so if we look under where we were doing the add and anchor and so forth. Now again, this anchor point tool is like if we want to convert. So let me show you that just since we're here. We'll finish up that whole tool. I did that, and then these are around it. Edge, I think we're zoomed in. With that, if I didn't have an anchor here, or there is no, you see there's no Bezier curve, right? There's no handles when I click on the corner, right? Because it's square. If I select it with the anchor point tool, I can click and it gets kind of dragged a little bit, and you see it kind of builds in a Bezier curve. It makes it round. Okay, so it basically converts we'll say a pure corner into a Bezier curve where you can actually shape it. Okay, and I only did it for that one corner because that's all I selected. So these other three corners are perfectly square or rounded. Well, this one's getting a little bit off because of the angle. Okay, and this one's getting off a little bit because of the Bezier curve that's happening here. But this one's still a complete corner. Okay, so if I click on this corner now, you can see it still says it's an anchor, but you're not getting the Bezier curve. Where here I'm getting a curve, and it will start to convert it out as we go. But it's converting from here to here. It's not still not giving me the Bezier handle if I want that. So I would have to come back with that corner tool and select and convert that anchor. See, by that little click and drag, I've now converted that anchor into a Bezier curve. Okay, and I get the handles of the Bezier shape. Okay, so that's what that does here. So we can add and take away, right? So if I can take away, I don't want that point, boom, click away, it took it away. Now I've got this kind of weird shape. And then lastly is the pen tool in here. Now with the pen tool, I've learned to do it just with a mouse because I had this before Wacom tablets and all that kind of stuff came out. But again, if you have a tablet or you have an iPad with a smart pencil or whatever, the magic pencil, whatever they're calling it, you can actually draw. So I'm going to just kind of click. If I click and go, it makes a straight point and a curve and a regular anchor point. If I click and drag, you see it converts it to Bezier curves. Okay, and I'm still just clicking and dragging with the pen tool, but if I click and drag, it gives me Bezier. If I just click and move, it gives me a anchor point. So we've got a couple anchor points, and then we have these here, which have the Bezier handles built in, right? The curves. And again, everything is movable and adjustable. So if you want a strange shape, you could either combine it, work with a bunch of shapes and build them together, or you can literally just kind of draw with it. So as you have drawings, you can bring them into Photoshop and trace on top to make this. And I'm going to have an assignment for you guys next week where you're kind of tracing shapes and filling them in. It's a little simple exercise to do. But with the pen tool, you can create any kind of shape that you want. And again, we have the fill. Let me just give it a different color so you can see. And the stroke. Okay, if I want no fill, I just click no fill. And now we just have a outline shape or line that's been created with the pen tool. Okay. Stable, unstable. Unstable. We're back now. Does that make sense? So the pen tool lets you create whatever kind of shape you want. As crazy or abstract as you want. Right now we're linked back together. I can give it a fill. And now it's filled in. And again, because it's a shape, you know, I can click, I can make the stroke bigger, I can change the fill. All those kind of things are completely adaptable with that, okay? And this is the swatches that are kind of built in. Some of these at the bottom might be because I added them. I occasionally will add, obviously, as I'm working, and I can make new folders with those. But this looks like the default at this point. Okay, so today we did the select tool, the direct select tool, allowing you to select the object or select the anchors of the object. We used the shape tools. We had the rectangle, the oval, the star, and the polygon. We used the pen tool just now, and then we did these add an anchor or delete an anchor, and then we had to basically convert an anchor to give it a Bezier curve, the handles, so you can make adjustments on those. We also went over the artboard and how to size it, where you can have it preset, whatever you want, but again, you're not restricted to that. You can make that bigger or smaller as you start to go. And we did some very, very basic pathfinding where we're taking some shapes and objects, okay, and just kind of putting them together to create new shapes and new objects. Okay, so selecting the objects using the Pathfinder tool. And again, you can combine or reshape those things. So those two shapes became one shape here. again, which is editable and adjustable now, but it is one shape. It's no longer two shapes because I pathfinded it together. I united them. Okay. Okay, questions on that? So that was like introduction to Illustrator 101 today. The very, very basics. And what I want you guys to do is, especially those that have never used Illustrator, is to open it up and then just start clicking with these very basic things of the shape tools. For those that have been using a little bit longer, you know, play with the pathfinding tools a little bit more. It's something you haven't maybe done as much. I'm trying to create some new shapes and some new items. Play with the converting the corners and rounding things and bringing things together to create, you know, new and interesting items. And again, just kind of getting used to the little bit different interface from where we've been for the last month or so, utilizing Photoshop. Right? It's different, okay? But you'll find it's pretty simple, but it allows you to be fairly creative as we start to go. All right, questions? Gotta go on. Anybody?
I have no questions.
All
I
right.
would like to fix my camera.
Anybody else? Okay, so open Illustrator, no real assignment, but to sit there, play with the shape tools, the select tools, the direct select tools, work with those items, get kind of used to what things are, look at where they are, click on things and go, what is that? Oh, that's type. We haven't done that yet, but okay. Oh, that's gradients. What's the transparency? What's that going to do? And just start to play and click around, and that's perfectly fine. You know, here's the strokes. We're going to get more into this as we go. I'm going to show you how to do all the all these items, but I want to just kind of get used to the interface, understand that, you know, these items on the window are typically over here. Again, it might be lined up a little bit differently on your computer, but get it set up the way you feel comfortable so you can find the things as we go. Know that there are some effects and you can start to play with those. The views here are different ways of looking at it, and we'll go through when you would and rulers and those kind of things with that. Type we're going to get into object. These are your paths and your lines. You can make patterns. We'll do some of that. These are cutting and pasting items, and then your filer, basically saving kind of ways. Okay. So just kind of getting used to that, because I know we still have the record albums you guys are working on, so I don't want to overburden you with a big Illustrator project right now, but I do want you to take some time. You know, we're 2:30, you know, you basically another hour and a half of time that you can use to work on the lab time of playing with Illustrator, in addition to starting to finish up your record albums for Tuesday. Okay, questions? I'm going to stop the record.